we're going to learn so much more with our first 20 customers than we did in 2 years in a boardroom.
Welcome to the Medical Sales Accelerator Podcast. I'm Zed Williamson.
And I'm Clark Wiederhold.
This podcast exists, but scale to the value you get from those great one-to-one conversations at conferences and sales meetings.
Customer-oriented innovation. 3 small words with big meaning.
That's why we're speaking with our guest today, David Carey, a proven medical device executive known for building and growing teams into world-class, high-performing organizations. Currently, Chief Commercial Officer at Pristine Surgical. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's good to be with you, Zed. And hi, Clark. Good to see you.
Likewise. So David, customer-oriented innovation, I know, is something that is a passion of yours and is driving a lot of the focus, with the team and the organization you guys are building. What are the origins? Where did it start?
It's interesting. You become, I think, an amalgamation of all the companies you worked for before, mission orientation, all those things, your sales training. And so I've had quite a few stops along the way. And what I've found, particularly around orthopedics, is there's this orientation towards the widget, right? Where they say, it's feature-based selling. I've got this thing. I want you to buy this thing. This thing does this, this, and this. And, go buy my thing and deploy 500 people out to deliver that message. And, the truth is that COVID bought us some time to think a little deeper than that with my team at Pristine. And we started spending time with really looking at what the customer challenges are and how can we uniquely fix them. And so our initial product wasn't intended to be a single-use scope at all, but it was during some of that, teeth gnashing that we really found that there are some true challenges that we could fix with a single-use oriented product. And so it completely changed our product offering, what market we pursued. But the truth is, we really went deep looking at what our customers need and what the challenges are within endoscopy, which arguably hasn't changed a lot in the last 40 some odd years. So for us, it really did drive us to think more about what challenges we could possibly solve and how could we do it uniquely. And single use became very clear to us once we spent that time.
Was it a challenge to get over the idea or the draw, I guess, towards focusing on the device and going and yelling at people, we have a thing? Or was it once your team realized, was it this more of an epiphany, like, this feels better?
No, so we brought in some talent, Colleen Cassidy, who's excellent, and she's been our constant voice of the customer. And Thurm Ballard, our VP of Sales, is an industry veteran like me. And, we brought in people that spent a lot of time and really understood what some of the challenges were that we were trying to fix. And so with that strength, working with our engineers, it really became a no-brainer. But, it was, I think what had to happen was we needed to have some time to really understand costs, visualization challenges, technical availability of product, and all of these things that all came to a head. And it was pulling that team together and then spending the time to do the research to understand that it's not about the widget, it's about the customer. And if you do it right, you can create a product that actually has staying power. For us, right at that point, I think, Zed, we changed our orientation towards saying we're not just a single-use device either, where a reusable one was before. If it's just plastic where metal existed before, is that a sustainable business model? You're easy to knock off. So we started thinking, how is it that single-use can be unique? How can we approach the business in a unique way so that we are solving other problems? We knew during a time of COVID that budgets were going to be tight on the other side. There was going to be a backlog of patients. There was also going to be not a lot of capital going around because folks had bought capital and then couldn't do cases with it for a period of a couple of months.
Right.
So that hangover effect is still strong. And so we looked and thought about our business model, and we're bringing to market a subscription model that eliminates big CapEx in order to get access to technology. So, all of these things are just kind of gearing around in our heads. And as you're a startup and you're making those 200 decisions you make a week, the orientation towards the customer guides us. So much so, we recently changed our entire mission to simplifying endoscopy, which every time we got a decision to make, that comes up. Are we simplifying things? People are tired of hearing me say it, but people are using it back on me too, which is absolutely appropriate. And it's really that orientation that I think is guiding us towards what we are planning for a very successful one.
Is there anything that surprised you, that caught you off guard, that one of those scenarios where you thought you knew all of the challenges, but you didn't foresee that as you guys started to peel the onion back about the frustrations, the struggles, the challenges that the customer was going through and facing every day, that you guys learned about?
It was interesting. we, I've been in all different types of businesses, cardiac, spine, you name it, even in eyes with microscopy. And you see all these different disciplines, and nurses tend to specialize in those spaces.
Yeah.
We really underestimated how stressful endoscopy is for the support staff. When that scope comes out, or if it's not available, equipment is always a challenge. Robbing from Peter to pay Paul, taking scopes from now that you need for later in the day, and then having to scramble. So there's a constant strain on nurses in endoscopy around supporting people that are doing these cases. And so it wasn't until we got deep with people that we really understood that. We thought everything was, we knew that equipment challenges were there. We didn't know how much of a pain point they were, and how much they've been exacerbated by lack of capital for people to be able to make investments and to keep up with the acceleration of patients that are hitting the market right now.
When I hear you say those things, this is where I turn into a total geek, because I get the excited, like, the hairs on the back of my neck raised, because I don't care how smart someone is in business. This happens to everybody. It happens to me all the time. We accidentally think things exist in a vacuum. And what you guys uncovered is this thing completely outside that probably has massive impact on your ability to compete and drive your own growth. And that's why I geek out about this stuff, because there's so many times we get in that, oh, well, yeah, hey, we have this little thing, it's this vacuum, and we're good. No, you're not. There's more.
Right.
There's a bigger narrative.
Right. Two funny thoughts on that. I mean, the first one is that, and I've done startups and been around companies that have innovated. You think you understand things, but you're going to learn more. And we say this all the time at Pristine. We're going to learn so much more with our first 20 customers than we did in 2 years in a boardroom. And people will tell you, I've built, scaled, and even sold companies based on hearing a surgeon say to me at one point, "Do you know what would be cool?" And then you better get your pen out as soon as you hear that phrase, because customers are going to tell you, they're either going to tell you something that's either incremental to where you already are and say, it would be better if this was over here or whatever. And that's important stuff. Even guys that are 30 years in like me, you got to be humble. You got to keep learning. But I also think that people will take your product in directions that you would never have thought about. I mean, think about the Intuitive story, starting in cardiac and ending up where it did. That was customer oriented, and what amazing fortune it was for them and for us in a whole that they were able to figure that out. So that doesn't mean you should be sloppy in your research and just go figure it out. But I think it does make the case for a well thought out, minimally viable product to get out there and get in the arena and mix it up with customers. Or as my VP of Sales Thurm says, the point of friction is where you're going to find out where, if your assumptions are true or not. And just be open-minded and have that notepad and the pencil, as I always do. I'm still a pencil guy because we make mistakes, but we learn and we pivot and we go. And I think that's really the orientation for startups to be successful. You got to get out there in the arena as fast as you can.
Customer-oriented innovation drove a mission statement. My words, not yours, right? But
Yep.
Simplify endoscopy. That simplifying statement, what have you witnessed as your team has matured and organized around this mission, that clarity has brought?
Awesome question. Yeah, I think what it did, it's a really easy thing to say, Clark. Okay, our mission, simplifying endoscopy, right?
Yep.
So that sounds great. Sounds very easy. Fits on a brochure and a business card. But it's really actually become a calling for us. And it's a checkpoint for everybody as we're going through this. As I mentioned, we spend a lot of time. Supply chain's obviously been a bear for everybody. How do we insulate customers from that challenge? how do we orient our customer service process? How do we make ourselves easier to work with as a company, not only for our sales agents, but for our customers? So it's an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to act on every day, but it's become part of our language now that it orients us towards the customer, and it's actually a statement that allows us to hold each other to account to make sure that we're delivering that. And when call, is it the right call, and are we going to make things easier for people to do business with us or for them to do their job, which is even more important.
What I like so much about it, and I hope everybody listening is paying attention to, because it's very seldom that you see a company be able to achieve what you have. It's a 2-word mission statement. Like, if we were in person, I would fist bump you on that, because so many times mission statements turn into this goofy paragraph filled with, cliche BS on a plaque that's covered in dust and no one ever remembers what the hell's on it. And when you simplify it to 2 words, it's now that tool that you just mentioned that it's your North Star. It can, you start heading the wrong direction. Someone goes, "Hey, you're not simplifying endoscopy." Ooh, you're right. And that's so powerful. And if there's people out there that are spending days and days on, paragraph long mission statements, the goal is not a mission statement. Like, you don't get to pat yourself on the back when the mission statement is done and be, all right, that's done, let's move on. Is that it should be that North Star. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. It's a long road to get to that. It was a lot of teeth gnashing. Our CEO, Brian Lord, was on the Notre Dame Law Review. So that's a tough guy to get any kind of text by as a marketer. But I think when you look at, and everybody aspires to be their own version of Apple, but that simplicity took them a while to get to. And it's really hard to maintain. And so we anticipated, and I said that to Brian. I remember we were sitting in the boardroom, it was late one night, and I said, we do this, we own this. It's not just a thing you say, because if you don't deliver on it, you're going to be mocked for the rest of your life. So you've really got to hold yourself to account to that. If you're going to say I simplify things, then you can't have a complicated acquisition process for your product. You've got to be easy to work with the whole way through. And we went for it, and it's been really good for the culture of the place, because again, and it gets used. I use it. It gets used against me many times during the day, and that's cool. It's fun. It's fun to see it take hold and really, as you said, that it's really our North Star. It's what keeps us focused on customers, which is, as the commercial guy, is where I want our heads.
I don't know if it's too early to ask this question, but in the recent history, there was AAOS. I don't know what your participation in that was, and if you had a chance to get feedback from customers about where you are today. Is there anything interesting come from that?
Yeah, so our launch is imminent, and so it's week to week for our first in man, and then our subsequent rollout. So we had a great showing at Academy, nice size booth, great traction. We were right by the Innovation Theater, which brings a lot of people going to see new things. So we had really good traction from not only from physicians, but also from industry and distributors that are interested in representing our product. So that's always good. That makes you feel like what you're doing is right, which we felt we were on the right path, but that kind of that vindication is always good to get. But yeah, I think we've got a good plan for a deliberate launch where we are going to take the classic method of making sure that we test everything well. We understand all of it in terms of how everything fits. And if there's any other messaging or anything else we need to do to make sure that we've got the right product pricing and programs for people so that we can make sure that we put this new tech in the right hands, we're going to do it.
This might be a weird question, but this sounds like a fun path you've been on for these last few years. Have you experienced anything through this time that gives you insight that if you could go back in time to one of your other roles, you would have done something a little bit differently?
No, there's that whole Steve Jobs thing, and I don't want to, but where all the dots ultimately connect.
Right.
But I've been really fortunate to be around a lot of new tech that's come into the market. Spinal fusion cages, one of the early reps for those, drug-eluting stents at Medtronic. robots at Stryker. I think I've always just been attracted to that. And I would encourage people to think about that, because, we've all had those jobs where we were in market share fights where I hate using the term widget, but I'll do it again. It's my widget versus their widget. It's a whole nother thing to put something in someone's hand and have them look at it and then look up at you and look at it again and go, huh, and just think about the practical application and to just help people think differently from an innovation standpoint. Had the same experience with Mako when people first watch robots do total knees without any cutting blocks or anything, and jaws hit the floor. That's a lot more fun to spend your time on, and it's a lot, and it gives you even more excitement about getting out of bed in the morning. So I think if anything, I would have spent less time on market share fights and more time on trying to actually impact the business. And I think the longer you get in it, the more you think about your legacy, the people you know, and
Sure.
I'd want to focus more on innovation. And to just follow up with one more thing, I have continually learned that it's really important that you get the right people on your bus, and that if you don't have the right people in the right place, that's okay. There's a spot for them, but you've got to be able to act quick and make sure that you get the people that you can trust and get a lot done with. Startups don't have a lot of people. We don't have departments. We got a guy, and so that guy better have it together,
Better
or a
be the right
gal,
guy. Yeah.
because you know what I mean. It's so who you surround yourself with is pivotal. You spend so much time on these things, particularly in startups. I'm on calls till midnight, 1 a.m. I better like these people, or it's not going to be pleasant.
When you think about the you, let's say, years ago, and what I mean is that person they're in their career, maybe they're earlier in their career today, they like where they're going, they have thoughts of leadership, they maybe like the idea of being a chief commercial officer, they're not there yet. Is there any guidance or tips or things that you would guide them to do today to help them go towards that path?
Specifically in a startup, I would say diversity is really important, diversity of experience. So a lot of folks in my role, at least I've seen, kind of come up through one side, either sales or marketing, and then generally we'll do a rotation, and then we'll go back in and move up that way. And I've never really found that to be quite enough. Some guys and gals can pull it off, but I think one thing that I've done that's, I guess, a little different that might help is that I really have gone back and forth between sales, marketing, sales leadership, marketing leadership, a little bit of back and forth, large company and small, just trying to get that different experience in different markets. So I'm also a little bit unique in that not everybody goes from an 8 to 10 year career in cardiac to spine and then ortho. But it keeps it fresh. And honestly, it's really about solving problems with customers for me. And so, in my eye, getting experience and going to learn new things and fixing problems for customers is where it's at. And so, the diversity of actually having been a marketing leader made me a stronger sales leader because I knew who to go to in corporate or wherever I needed to get something. Having been a sales leader made me a much more stronger marketing VP because of the fact that I knew the challenges that they were dealing with and I understood my channel. So when you get to CCO at a startup, your ability to relate to other people and get results with them through them becomes crucial. That's hard to do if you haven't done it or if you haven't at least been approximate to it at some point in your career.
That's strong. It feels like you're talking about balance. Like if you're walking a tightrope and you're holding that bar, if too much is weighted to the right, you're probably not set up right. And it sounds like what you've done is you spread that bar out so you could walk that tightrope to where you are today.
I would love to say it was all intentional. I mean, everything's a certain amount of luck, right? Looks great looking backwards, but giving an example, um, you know, if I had just gone up the straight sales path and come over here, I would not have been able to help the organization find some talent around manufacturing, quality, some of those things where folks out in the field just don't get that much exposure to. So it's supply chain. So I would put the people that we have in the boxes at Pristine up against any large organization. And we've been fortunate to be able to get some of those people because we've worked alongside them at the Strikers and the Medtronics and the other places that we've been historically.
I'm excited to watch where you guys go from here. I love that we started this conversation around the idea of customer orientation. It's funny because it's not a new idea. Every
Right.
industry in existence, when you learn, you're taught, don't focus on you, focus on the customer. And we always get drawn back in. And like you said, there are likely thousands of reps out there today talking about this widget they have that does stuff. And, I can run around door to door saying, I got a screwdriver, you should buy it. But it just goes, someone needs to have a screw that they need to twist. And so I like that we're bringing it back to that you built your mission on it, this simple mission. And I'm really excited to watch you guys take it from here. And David, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I think this gives our audience a good insight into who the company Pristine is and who you are as a leader. Do you mind if we put your LinkedIn link in the show notes for if people want to reach out to you to connect?
100%. Absolutely.
Awesome. So for our audience, visit medicalsalesaccelerator.com. When you do so, you can find a downloadable resource that helps you communicate better with your customers. You can sign up for emails to get notifications of upcoming episodes, and you can actually make a suggestion of a guest or a topic.
If you found value in today's episode, do a couple things for me. Subscribe to the podcast if you have not already. Leave us some stars, give us a review, and please share the episode with your friends, your family, your mama and your daddy. We greatly appreciate it. David, thanks again for joining us. Make it a great week, everybody.